The garbage we're working on here is the field car, my 56 Chevy that was completely created right here on Roadkill Garage. Years ago, I bought this thing as nothing but a body. It was on a really clapped out chassis, but then the Hot Rod Garage Show on MotorTrend had a really clapped out body on top of a nice brand new chassis. I was able to swindle them, and we ended up doing an episode of Roadkill Garage where Steve and I swapped the chassis and the bodies so that we've got my nice rust-free body on top of their nice restored chassis. Ultimately, Steve and I took the engine that was known as the COVID 350 because I built it in my garage using spare parts that I had during the pandemic and was able to just put together this 350 cubic inch small block Chevy that made 500 horsepower on an episode of Engine Masters on MotorTrend. We coupled that engine with a T56 manual transmission from American Powertrain and slammed it in the car with a Ford 9-inch rear end that I had pieced together from here and there. And ultimately, on an episode of Roadkill at Redding, California, it ran as quick as 11:38 at 120 miles an hour. The story all falls apart from there. Steve and I did an episode of Roadkill Garage where I wanted to road trip the field car all the way up to Samoa Drag Strip near Eureka, California, just because I'd never been there. And I wanted to bang gears there right next to the ocean. And I did, but man, it was not pretty getting there. We killed a bunch of ignition boxes on this thing. And it all came down to the fact that we were using the wrong spark plug wires. We had solid core wires that had emitted some radio noise that was killing the ignition boxes. The bad part about that is along the way, we were using ignition boxes that didn't have rev limiters in them. And we had a problem with the clutch hanging up and not letting me bang gears, and I missed shifts, and this thing over-revved to the moon with no rev limiter. Valves kissed pistons, and unfortunately, that COVID 350 is junk. It's got like 4 holes with only 60 PSI of cranking compression. It's got 150 in the other holes. So our goal on this episode is to get the engine out, fix whatever's wrong, hop it up a little bit, get it back in the car, and hopefully this thing will run 10s naturally aspirated at the drag strip with just a 350 small block Chevy. Roadkill Garage, where failure is the excuse to vaunt us to new highs.
Oh yeah, I like your attitude, Freiburger.
I don't like our attitude at the end of the last episode with this car when we broke the engine for absolutely no reason, but I do like our mission to fix it and make it bigger, better, faster, louder. Maybe it could even get married to Farrah Fawcett later.
Can we?
Do you understand the reference? Because no one else did.
Yeah, it's the Bionic Man, the $6 million man.
Yeah, and I mean, he fell out of a plane on TV and they replaced half his body and then he scored Farrah.
Wow.
I mean, if I can blow up a 350 small block Chevy and fix it and be faster, it's virtually the same thing.
Yes.
Ooh, maybe we could get you a red swimsuit.
No, no. Sorry. The first thing we have to do really is see what we've got.
Yeah, I think my plan with this engine, which we think has a bunch of valves crashed into pistons, do we troubleshoot it in the car or do we just rip it out completely?
It's gonna have to come out.
Rip it out?
Yes. And what we find will tell the story on what we need to do.
Okay.
Let the engine removal commence.
Okay. I was hoping you were just gonna do it for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is this gonna come off?
Yes. There we go.
Now we're talking.
Now up and off.
Perfect.
One header off. These are very expensive and time-consuming spark plug wires. Distributor coming out. Out.
Out.
There we go.
There you go, David.
Okay. Now that we have the engine out, we're just gonna throw it on a stand. I wanna tear it down and see what kind of damage I inflicted on this pooch.
The flywheel looks like brand new. Oh no.
Perfect. This gives you an idea how much coolant we typically just dump directly on the ground. Slightly less of a disaster than our usual, just slightly. We ready?
Yeah.
All right, intake coming off. What we're seeing in here is that there's some reversion or black carbon goop in a couple of these intake ports, and obviously that's because the intake valve is bent, and so the exhaust is finding its way back up into the intake manifold. I don't see any death here in the lifter valley just yet, though, do you?
No, it looks great in there. Are you ready to look at the valve train?
Yep. You'll notice I've got the 1.65 to 1 rocker arms on there.
Those look like Cro-Magnums.
Yeah, they are. Built with what I had. Anything obviously bad yet?
Not really.
I don't have any here that don't have the lash they're not supposed to have.
Yeah.
I'm hoping to reuse mostly everything here, and so I'm inspecting really carefully to make sure there's nothing that's beat up, bent, cracked, tweaked, maimed, otherwise destroyed by me. These are way too flimsy a push rod to be using in something like this.
Yeah.
All right, the cylinder head's coming off. Now we're gonna find out if the valves did in fact hit the pistons as I have been estimating. There's no witness mark of valves hitting pistons on this side. And there's no marks on the valves. Nothing has made contact.
That we can see. How about if we put some solvent down in the chamber and see if it leaks?
That's what we should do, for sure.
I'm using mineral spirits, which is a solvent, but it's not very volatile. But it will catch fire, so use with caution. Oh, wait a minute.
That one's going down, isn't it?
It looks like it has. Well, what's really apparent here is the level in here is dropping, indicating leakage, and it's running all over the table there. I think we definitely say that the valves were leaking.
So in other words, it's broken, but it's not my fault.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're vindicated, Freiburger.
Let's pull the other head off. It's gotta be the same thing. No contact there either.
No.
Let's solvent this one and see what's up.
There we go.
These are holding. I don't see leaks on this side.
No.
I mean, so far, if I was shopping to buy this engine, I'd be like, oh man, this thing's pretty fresh.
And look at that head, it's not leaking
It's
at all.
holding perfectly.
And the other one,
Definitely had a big leak.
yeah.
So that head is our suspect at this point. Wow, I'm so confused now.
Yeah, me too.
I really am. Well, you'd think that I would be happy that I didn't find that much wrong with my engine, like no valves crashed into pistons and all that stuff, all the doom and gloom I had predicted. But it leaves me with a problem of wondering, why didn't any oil spill out of there? That's kind of strange. Like, what could be wrong with this bottom end? And so we're gonna start to investigate that because of my concern about what that RPM might have done to the connecting rod bolts and such. We're gonna begin by cutting open the oil filter and seeing if we can find any metal fragments in that. Then we're gonna drain the oil pan, pull the oil pan off, and we'll show you how we're gonna investigate what might be wrong with the rods.
Just on a cursory inspection, it's clean as a whistle, David. Want to take a look?
Is it pretty good?
Yeah.
Okay, it's not showing any sparklies. Okay, well, that's a relief. All right, let's take our oil pan off. It's got a Felpro one-piece oil pan seal on it. Actually pretty good and generally reusable. I think I even reused a used gasket. We got no metal on the screen. That's all good. There's a little RTV that I just knocked in. Nothing else objectionable.
But we have just a regular garden variety cast crank 2-bolt main block with factory main cap bolts.
Those are factory main bolts, but they are ARP rod bolts, and that's very encouraging to me.
Well, I mean,
We haven't found any faults.
right. It's not a really highly reliable combination to begin with.
Because it's 2-bolt and cast crank?
Yes.
I might even argue that we should pop one rod cap off and have a look at a bearing. So what we're gonna do is take a main cap off, probably the center one, and we're gonna see any witness marks from chattering of the main cap moving around on the block. The bearing could be happier, that's for sure.
It's
Oh yeah, it's
walking.
walking a lot.
Yeah. What it'll do is it'll rock back and forth, and then you'll see metal transfer from the cap to the saddle in here. Those spots are pretty distinctive on this.
No, that's textbook. And when that cap moves, it causes the type of bearing wear that we're seeing here too. What that is though is more an example of me using this whole assembly sort of in a way it's not really designed for.
Right.
It's a cast crank, it's a stock bolt, it's a 2-bolt block to Steve's argument, and it doesn't want to see 7,000 RPM over and over and and over and over, and it probably even doesn't want to see 500 horsepower over and over and over.
No.
Yeah.
It's kind of something you might be able to cheat and get away with for a while, but eventually you're looking at engine failure.
Well, it's been an interesting day. We found problems with the engine. I guess on one hand, the thing about no valves hitting pistons, which is what I had guessed the whole time, I'm glad that's not a problem. I'm glad it's not really my fault. We did find a big leak.
Yeah, there was a lot of leakage past the valves.
And then we took the bottom end apart, and I was about ready to give the rod bolts a pass. I was so freaked out about all that RPM on these connecting rods. But then Steve started questioning my stock hardware on the 2-bolt mains, and we took it apart, and man, that is textbook cap walk. So I don't know what I'm gonna do. I'm literally gonna think about it overnight and tell you in the morning. We've made a decision about our valiant little 350. It's done as a race motor. I think my goal with this would be to put some different heads on it that reduce the compression ratio, because it's 11-to-1 right now. I'd want it like 10-to-1. Put a small cam in it and just make it a cruiser. I don't think it's dead duck.
Oh, no, it's fine. The motor is okay. It's just not a race engine, and you're expecting high RPM, high horsepower, and low ETs.
Right.
So.
And while we wanted to run 10s with a 350 Chevy, I wasn't willing to dump a bunch of money into this to make that happen. I was willing to do this, because this is an engine that's been sitting in my garage since the late 90s. It's the Barney motor, Steve.
I know, and you know what? I think I'd like to see it sitting in here a lot more than sitting in your dusty garage.
Me too. So for the first time ever, the Barney motor is gonna see drag strip time. It's gonna be in a car. It never has been before. What this is a factory Chevy 400 block. It's got forged crank, 10-to-1 forged pistons. This thing was the prototype for the Bonneville engine that I ran in 2004 to get in the 200-mile-an-hour club.
Oh, so it precedes 2004. That's 20 years ago.
It is.
Yeah.
No, I built this with Brule in the late 90s, but this thing has made 1,000 horsepower with boost. It's got a 263, 268 solid roller cam, AFR 227s, and in our most recent Engine Masters that we used it on, it made 570 horsepower at 6,600, and I think like 520 pound-feet.
I think that Dominator might be a little overkill at that power level, though.
Now, I want to put on the Porter Wilson intake and carb that was on this, so we're going to make some changes to this engine and ultimately throw it in here, but unfortunately, before we do that, I need to make some new brake lines that got gacked. And then we'll be throwing a Barney motor in the field car. The plan here is obviously to get the Barney motor in the field car, but first we're gonna fiddle with some stuff. I'm gonna change the intake manifold. I've never run this carburetor on this engine, and we're gonna use the intake manifold that was on it when we dyno tested it for Engine Masters, which happens to be the same intake that was on the 350 that we removed. So we're just gonna swap the intake while it's here on the ground.
I hope you have a big 4150.
We have the one that was on this car.
That's Dominator flange.
Yeah. Wow, this thing has the big old corks at the end. This does not fit good. I don't think this was actually installed.
No, it's not.
No, I think this was just mocked in place.
Well, like, by the way, it just came right off.
Yeah, that wasn't installed. All right, I'm glad we did this.
Well, those are some prodigious heads when you look at those intake ports.
Yeah, these are the old AFR 227 CNC.
Wow.
Yeah, they're pretty stout. You may ask yourself, why is this engine purple? Makes you think of, I love you, you love me.
That's all I know.
There was a time in the early 2000s where I was building so many motors, I was sick to death of painting them factory colors. It was either Chevy orange or Hemi orange. I had one that was white, and then I had one that was yellow, and then I had this purple one, and this one's still here. Those intake manifold gaskets look good to me. How about you?
They look pretty good to me, too.
Let's just clean this up and slap another one on there. I'm going to install this Super Victor intake manifold that has been extensively ported by Wilson Manifolds. Actually, I say extensively, it's their off-the-shelf port job. It's not a custom job, but when we dyno tested on this engine, it actually improved power a lot over an unported one, so that's what we're going to use. The problem is, with the design of these old AFR cylinder heads, they're different now. There's a giant gap between the manifold and the end rails of the block here. I mean, huge, disturbingly large. And so I'm gonna be making one of the tallest stacks of ultra gray Permatex in my life. And we're gonna let it dry overnight and hope that it seals up. This is gonna be ugly. Wow, that's gnarly, and I'm honestly not sure it's tall enough. Oof. Ugh, air bubble. Fail. This is not my best work. That's not tall enough. Wow, this is really lousy. I strongly object to everything I'm doing here. Wow, that's hideous. I'm gonna have to make the back one taller. This is horrible, but I'm going for the double-decker. If I received an engine from any engine builder and they had done this, I would never use them again. All right, I'm gonna drop it. It all touched. I'm gonna bolt her down. I think I'm happy I did my double-decker. We're gonna install the same flywheel and clutch that I had on the 350. Every time I take this thing apart, which seems like a lot, I mentioned to you that this has an aluminum flywheel because often they'll be billet steel. And because it's lightweight, sometimes it can be tricky to launch and drive, but with this bigger displacement engine with more torque, it should be no big deal. The other thing I wanted to point out is that the 400 cubic inch small block Chevy that this is based on is the only factory small block that came externally balanced. This one has been internally balanced, which you can tell because there's no weight on the damper, and it also means I can use a neutral balance flywheel. I will torque this. I'm just running them down. All right, clutch on. We have to use the type of disc centering device that's tapered instead of splined. Okay, install it. Let me pull off the engine feet, we'll install the motor mounts. I feel like there's a role reversal happening right now. Ready for down?
Yep. Okay.
Gonna
Can
go
we come
in?
up with the transmission?
All right, we have an angularity problem. Oh, and the engine's sitting on the oil pan right now. We've got this drag link in the way of the oil pan, and it might be a lost cause. We may have to change the oil pan to our old one, but we're gonna knock the drag link down and try to install the engine and then see if the drag link fits.
Okay. It's getting close.
Yeah, it is.
It just slid right in a bunch more.
Yeah, it did. Yeah, it's in now. And we made it to Formosa Drag Strip, home of the March meet since 1959. We got the 571 horsepower 406 in the thing now, and our hope is what?
10-second
10
quarter mile
second
time
quarter
slip.
mile. Here's the question I think that's critical is I now have a button on the shifter that activates both the line lock and a two-step rev limiter at the same time.
Yeah,
I've never launched off a two-step with a clutch.
Yeah, I think you just let that thing dangle on the shifter and drive it like you always have.
I think probably, at least for the first pass. The first pass is always the best pass.
I think
so. I'm gonna go with what I know, and to be honest, I'm gonna granny shift just to make sure that it goes all the way down the track.
Yeah.
Okay, line lock. All right, let's see what we can do.
It's not even close. 11:52.
I didn't have enough RPM to run a good mile an hour. That was weak. I said yesterday on the street the thing felt slow. Maybe I was right. Man, it didn't even pull 7,000 RPM.
Really?
Nuh-uh.
Did it run out of engine at top end?
No, that's what I'm saying. It wasn't even at 7,000 through the lights.
Oh, really? Well, I know, because it was slow. It ran 1150 at 119.
Right.
What's the David Freiburger genius plan from here?
There isn't one. I can't drive half a second out of that.
What do we do?
Put 2 degrees of timing in it. That's all I got.
Yeah, I know. That's it.
Did you bring the timing light?
Didn't I hand it to you yesterday?
Nope. All right, what's happening here is that the car is slow, but we're going to bump 2 more degrees of timing in it, see if it makes a little more power, and I'm just gonna have to power shift it.
Okay, that was a pretty good burnout. Hopefully, our changes are going to do incremental improvements. We'll see. We're staged up, ready to rock. Good shifting. Oh, that's some nice shifting.
Decent launch, faster shifting, a little more RPM, hit a rev limiter just a tiny, tiny bit. When I shifted, that wasn't rev limiter under power, it was rev limiter when I was grabbing the gear.
Yeah, those are good shifts too. Man, he was booking. 11.00! Yeah! 11 flat. Wow.
That was good. Might have shifted a little late, but that was good. I was 124 miles an hour, I can tell by the tach.